LENZING AG TENCEL Global İş Yönetimi Başkan Yardımcısı Florian Heubrandner'i sahneye davet etmek istiyorum. Alkışlarınızla lütfen. Sürdürülebilir elyaf açığını bizlere anlatacak. Sahneyi Florian'a bırakayım. Buyurun.
Thank you. Thank you. A very good morning. Thank you very much. And thanks a lot to TGSD for having us. For me, it's the second time to be here. I was here first in 2019, and it's a great pleasure to be back. It's an amazing location also. And now after the pandemic, finally, I can be here again physically. Now, I guess most of you know LENZING, but just very briefly, and I promise this is the only slide about the company. We're at the very beginning of the value chain, of course. We're producing fibers. We're the global leader in wood-based cellulose fibers. This is our headquarters. This is where my office is from Monday till Friday. And we are producing LENZING, EcoVero, TENCEL Modal, and TENCEL Lyocell. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. And we're also very proud of our sustainability work and leadership we're doing. And if I may highlight one, it's the first one on this list here. It's our science-based target. We've committed as a company to be carbon neutral in 2050 and have a 50% reduction of our carbon emission by 2030. So in 8 years from now, we want to be down by 50%, and we're relentlessly working towards that. But today, I would like to talk about something bigger, something more global. It's about 113 million tons. That's our global fiber consumption. We all on the planet, we consume 113 million tons of fiber every year. This is mostly textiles, but it's also non-wovens, filters, hygiene, everything you need a fiber for. And just to put this into perspective, this is basically the physical weight of 2.2 billion people. So a quarter of, I know we heard today, there's 8 billion people of us on this planet, and a quarter of that weight is produced every day. And how did we get here? Now, how come we're producing 130 million tons of fiber? We actually started many years back at, of course, a much lower number. And it's been growing at a pace of roughly 3%. So every year we're adding 3% of fiber. The beginning was mainly driven by population growth. It's just more people on the planet. We need more fibers for clothing, for wipes, for hygiene. And after a while, what's become more important is the consumption per capita. People become economically better off. We spend more money on clothing and more money on hygiene. And today, what you see is that, looking at the fiber split, that roughly 2/3, starting from the bottom, is synthetic fibers, polyester, polyamide, and so forth. Then, of course, roughly 23%, roughly quarter is cotton. 6% is cellulosic fibers that we fit in, viscose, lyocell, Cara. And another 5% is in other natural fibers, like wool and silk. So that's the split we're looking at today. Now, if this journey continues the way it does, if you continue to grow, maybe a bit less, because growth will come down a bit, 2 to 3%, we basically need another 30 million tons of fiber in only 8 years from now. Today, we have 113 million tons. In 8 years from now, we'll need roughly 145, so 30 million tons of fiber. Population will grow. We've heard this in the morning. There will be more and more income available for people. On the other hand, people will hopefully use their clothing a bit longer, but overall, I think it's fair to assume that 2 to 3% is a reasonable number we're looking at. And the question is, where does this 30 million tons of fiber come from? And what kind of fiber does it have to be? Will it have to be the similar split as in the past, or will it have to be differently? And to make it even more specific, I made one little example of a small fashion brand. Let's assume we have a little brand today. Our average garment weighs 300 grams. Let's say we sell 5 million pieces. So we need today 1,500 tons of fiber. It could be anything between cotton, polyester, lyocell, wool, you name it. And let's say we're a bit more ambitious in the market. We want to grow our brand by not 2 to 3%. We want to grow it by 5%. That means that in 2030, we will need 2,200 tons. So instead of 1,500 tons of raw material, we'll need 2,200 tons, 700 tons more. Or in other words, 50% more raw material, 50% more. And again, it could be cotton, lyocell, you name it. But just a lot of new raw material. I know that we're in the middle of a crisis and people are currently not short of raw material, but these times will change, I'm sure. And what will this new raw material have to be? Let's look at some of the aspects we'll have to take into consideration. We'll have to meet certain performance criteria. It will have to be more sustainable, for sure. It needs to be biodegradable, ideally, also something we've heard today. Circular, it needs to support the circular economy. It should be affordable, ideally even with stable prices. And most importantly, it needs to be there. It needs to be available. And that we've seen before the crisis is not always the case. I don't have the time to talk about all these 7, 8 different elements. I'd like to pick up just a few of them. Maybe starting with availability. Right now, fiber is abundant. There's cotton available, lyocell available, viscose, you name it. Everything is available. But once this crisis is over, I think we'll have to think, where do we get the new fiber from? How can we fill this 30 million fiber gap? And I've picked one fiber, cotton, talking about availability. I'll be honest, I also like cotton. I'm wearing quite some cotton today. But let's face it, cotton is not going to solve our 30 million ton problem. Cotton has been growing strongly. You see it here on the chart. It's been growing steadily over the past many years. But in the recent past, it's been relatively flat. If you look at the average harvest, we're somewhere between 25, 26, 27 million tons. And there's not much growth to be expected. So not much help for the 30 million tons to come. So availability is certainly going to be one big issue for our 30 million ton problem. The second one is, as I said before, it will have to be more sustainable. The 30 million tons to come will have to be more sustainable than the 113 million tons we're using today. These are just a few quotes. You can read them for yourselves that we've heard from consumers. LENZING as a company ran a consumer survey this year as part of our 30-year anniversary for our TENCEL brand. And we've got a lot of different industry, consumer voices, feedback from consumers saying that they want more sustainable clothing. And often, not only do they want more sustainable clothing, but often they are lost when it comes to purchasing. What is really sustainable? Which garment is a sustainable choice? Which garment is less of a sustainable choice? So if you think about our 30 million, it will have to be sustainable, and we'll have to somehow explain consumers, how can you make sure that you are making the right choice? One other topic I'd like to highlight is circularity. We've talked about, also we've heard that today. I think that to me, because there was just a question also to Stefan Seidel from Puma, for me personally, this is by far the biggest challenge that we are facing in this industry. To take this industry from a linear, throwaway business to a circular system. We've heard it today that right now, only 1% of clothing is actually being recycled. The rest ends up on landfills. If you think about your cupboard at home, your clothing, probably, if you believe statistics, 73% of that will end up on a landfill. Some of it will be reused for industrial wipes or insulation, but most of it will end up on landfill. We as LENZING, we have launched a product in 2017. It's called Refibra, where we basically reuse 30% of waste. So instead of using 100% of wood pulp, we're using only 70% of wood pulp and 30% of waste. Now, this fiber has been growing, but frankly not to the extent that we expected. We thought this would be a bestseller, and it's selling fine, but not as much as we thought it would. And partially also because of the cost, I'll be very honest. It may sound counterintuitive, but it's more expensive to produce a fiber out of waste than out of virgin wood at this point. And that's something, of course, that needs to change. But as of now, it's cheaper to buy virgin wood, even if it's very sustainable, than to take waste and turn it into something new. And we have a lot of partners, even big brands asking us, let's do a recycled fiber, because this will be cheaper. And the unfortunate answer is at the beginning, it's actually not. If you recycle fiber today, it's not immediately cheaper, because we're at the very beginning of a learning curve, and I think we need to jointly invest to come down that learning curve, similar to what we did in renewable energy or solar energy. But again, coming back to our 30 million, I think it's fair to say that these 30 million, a fair share of it will have to be circular. It will have to be a fiber that's made out of waste. And let's face it, this fiber is not available right now. We don't have much really circular fiber out there. If you look at our volumes, it's very small. We're trying to increase it, but it's very small. And I know that I don't have all the answers to these questions either. I just want us to be aware that once this crisis is over, and hopefully it's going to be soon because we're all suffering, many of our partners are suffering, also LENZING is suffering right now. When this crisis is over, we'll have to think of the future again. We'll have to think, where do we get our raw material from? If you're working for a brand, or you're a garment maker, a fabric mill, a spinner, you'll have to think, where will my raw material come from? And who says it's going to be readily available? I think it's worthwhile to think about, to make a plan, which fibers do I need next year, in 5 years, and until 2030. I invite you to do that planning, to sit down with your partners, with your customers, and think, what will my future fiber mix look like? Which fibers do I need that I already have today? And which new fibers do I need? Which sustainable fibers, and more importantly, which circular fibers? And with that, I want to already come to a close. I want to thank you for your attention, and I hope to talk to you many in person. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Florian Heubrandner'e çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Kendisine hediyesini takdim etmek üzere TGS'de Başkan Yardımcısı Ümit Özüren'i ben sahneye davet etmek istiyorum. Buyurun efendim.
Vielen Dank. Danke. Thank you very much. Perfect.
Thank you very much. Evet, alkışlarla uğurlayalım Florian'ı güzel sunum için.